Rory Mcilroy is arguably the most frustrating golfer in the history of the sport, but he is also the most thrilling. Now, every sportsman has moments in their career that they're not the proudest of, but McIlroy has a knack for making the worst ones in his career stay with fans for a long time. In this video, we're going to be highlighting the worst moments in Rory McIlroy's career that fans still talk about to this day. Let's dive in. First up at number 10, the 2022 Dubai Desert Classic. When Rory McIlroy found a bush on the 71st hole, he brought the tournament to its knees, but then he suddenly made a miracle recovery shot to walk off the green with a really unlikely par. And yet, it happened. It pretty much meant that he needed a birdie if he wanted to win, and a par to trigger a playoff with Victor Hovland and Richard Bland for the final hole, a par 5. With just 265 yards to go, he decided to go for the green with his second shot, but unfortunately, things went wrong the moment he made contact with the ball. Everyone knew at that point that it wasn't going to clear the water that was protecting the green. Unfortunately, the golf ball ended up landing in a watery grave and resulting in a bogey and a one-shot loss. Rory was absolutely devastated, and so were his fans, and it's something that fans look back on more painfully than anything else. Next up at number 9, the 2021 Ryder Cup. This was probably the most emotional moment in McIlroy's career. The week was pretty uneventful for Team Europe during the Ryder Cup in 2021, but then, after Rory polished off his dominating 3-2 victory over Xander Schauffele in the opening singles match, where he earned his only point at Whistling Straits. And then right after that, the 4-time major champ went right in front of the TV cameras and was as emotional as anyone had ever seen him. In an interview with Sky Sports, the Ulsterman broke down crying twice and even had to briefly step away so that he could gain his composure back. Then, after that, he went over to talk to NBC, where he was still teary-eyed and his voice was still cracking. And so, although Rory McIlroy won his singles match as Europe was thrashed 19-9 by the US at Whistling Straits, he still ended up with tears in his eyes because we had seen him being dropped for a session for the very first time in his career. Coming up at number 8, the 2021 DP Tour World Championship. Rory McIlroy started the final round of the season-ending DP World Tour Championship in Dubai, where he was tied for first when he came to the shot par 4 15th. And even though he hit a spectacular drive, he was unfortunately left with a short approach. It struck the flag and the ball ended up landing in a green side bunker. What was once a near guaranteed birdie suddenly turned into a bogey, and it was just the beginning of a miserable finish for the golfer. By the end of the final round, McIlroy finished 5 strokes behind Collin Morikawa as he dropped further shots at the 16th and 18 holes. And so while McIlroy had been in a strong position to win the tournament for the 3rd time in his career, his small mistake ended up resulting in him losing to Collin Morikawa. Following up at number 7, 2011 Masters. The 2011 Masters is definitely a moment in McIlroy's career that went down in the history books. Rory actually had a 4-shot lead going into the field round. At the time, it definitely looked like it was going to be a victory procession after that, but unfortunately that didn't turn out to be the case because he finished the day 10 strokes behind Charles Schwartzel, who ended up becoming the eventual champion. Rory McIlroy bogeyed the 1st and 5th holes, but he was still in contention when he reached the 10th. He also ended up bogeying the 11th and 4-putted the 12th before launching his tee shot into the creek on the 13th. Afterwards, in an interview, the Irishman shared that this was actually his first experience doing something like this, and although it didn't go as well as he initially had hoped, hopefully the next time he ends up in this sort of situation, he'd be able to handle it a little better. Moving on to number 6, the 2010 Opening Championship. Rory McIlroy had never shot around in the 70s at the Open, and then, like a total golfing legend, he began with a 63 on the old course. He even had a 2-stroke lead, but then the wind suddenly picked up on the second day, and just like that, all his hopes and dreams were blown away with it in a disastrous round of 80. To his credit, McIlroy became the first golfer ever to shoot a 63 at the Open and then shoot an 80 the following round, and while he finished out the last 2 rounds with a 69 and 68, he did at least manage to finish the week in 3rd place. It was just his inability to adapt to the sudden change in weather conditions on day 2 that cost him dearly. Now for number 5, the 2013 Honda Classic. Right after his multi-million-pound switch from the Titleist to Nike, McIlroy suddenly went on a run of really bad form, which even culminated in one of his lowest professional ebbs when he decided to withdraw from the Honda Classic after only 26 holes. What's even worse is that he was the defending champion at the time. Now, withdrawals are a pretty touchy subject in pro golf generally. In fact, even your typical club player usually gets a fair amount of flack for walking out in a monthly medal, but McIlroy's was made considerably worse by 2 main things. First of all, as the defending champion, he felt pretty pretty obligated to finish the competition. And then, secondly, he didn't really have much justification for opting out other than just poor performance. After that, McIlroy's press team released a press statement about the golfer dealing with some sort of really bad toothache, which everyone obviously knew was a lie, but the Irishman did get some credit at least when he finally admitted that the statement definitely was nonsense. In his own words, "I regret what I did. It won't happen again. There is no excuse for quitting." Up at number 4, 2019 Open Championship. The Open returned to Royal Portrush in Northern Ireland back in 2019, and all of the hype leading up to the tournament was entirely about how Rory Mcilroy was destined to win on a course where he had spent so much time training as a child. So, for the Irishman, the stakes were really high, and yet it lasted just one hole. McIlroy walked off with a quadruple bogey, 8 right after hitting his open tee shot into a bush. It was literally the stuff of nightmares, and somehow McIlroy managed to make it go from bad to worse when he recorded a 79. Later on, in an interview, Rory stated that at the end of the day he was still the same person and that he was going to go back to visit his family and friends, but he just hoped that they didn't think any less of him after a nightmare performance like that. To his eternal credit, McIlroy did shoot a 65 in the second round, but missed the cut by a shot. Coming up at number 3, 2010 PGA Championship. Rory McIlroy totally blew his chance to win his very first major when he 3-putted the 15th green, dropping him out of a tie for the lead. The worst part is that his final hole birdie putt only just missed the hole, leaving him 1 stroke behind Bubba Watson and the eventual champion Martin Kaymer in the playoff. Following up at number 2, dissing the Ryder Cup. For a lot of players and even Rory McIlroy himself now, the Ryder Cup is considered the peak of golf. Second to maybe winning a major, there's nothing that can beat the rush that players like Lee Westwood, Ian Poulter, and others get from representing Europe and competing against the USA. But a young McIlroy said back in 2009 that he actually wasn't interested in any of that. In fact, when he was asked about his interest in making the Ryder Cup team, McIlroy even stated that it wasn't even a huge goal of his. What's even worse is that he called it an exhibition at the end of the day. These shocking comments by the Irishman definitely provoked a pretty icy response from the then Ryder Cup captain Colin Montgomery, who promptly replied that the Ryder Cup is most definitely not an exhibition. Clearly, McIlroy quickly changed his tune once he made the team and has been a fully paid-up Ryder Cup staple for Team Europe ever since. Finally, at number 1, the spat with Horizon. Finally, the last moment in Rory McIlroy's career that will forever be remembered by fans is that famous, or should we say infamous, spat with Horizon. This was actually back in 2014 when the Irishman suddenly decided to quit Horizon Sports Management, a management firm of his then close friend, Graham McDowell, to start his own management group. This was most likely because he wanted more money. Unfortunately for McIlroy, however, Horizon claimed that McIlroy was acting illegally because his contract with them still hadn't expired yet. After that, some reports of a rift between McIlroy and McDowell circulated at the time, but both players claimed that the rumors were exaggerated. Though McIlroy did once make a pretty cryptic comment in a TV interview where he said, "If you want to be in the circus, you have to put up with the clowns." Still, McIlroy has patched things up with both McDowell and Horizon since then, and the sports star apparently settled with the group for 20 million euros in 2015. And yet, things were never the same between the two after that. And that's a wrap for this video. Do you remember any of these moments in Rory McIlroy's career? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.